everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity, and we're bringing an old friend back on this episode. It's Al Basile, blues artist, horn player, matter of fact, and we've interviewed him here before, and he's always a blast to talk to. It's been a couple years, though, and in fact, it's back when he did his last studio album. The album in between then and now was a compilation, remastering type of album, but now this is a studio album of brand new songs, and they are phenomenal. If you've heard any of his stuff before, you know to expect great things, and great things is what we're receiving from him on this album called Blues in Hand. If you haven't heard of Al and you're just listening to this interview, I just out of luck, then I want you to use this album as a great way to be introduced to Al's voluminous work. He's done recordings for many years, and he just gets better every time. And so this would be a great album to break yourself in on and become a fan of Al Basile. While you're listening and watching this interview, would you mind going ahead and hit like? And if you're not already a subscriber, hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're catching this interview on. It shouldn't be costing you anything extra, but it sure helps us out a lot. And also feel free to share this interview with friends who are into blues. They might be a outside chance they haven't heard of Al before. I'd love to bring Al a new fan, a new consumer of his work. So without any further ado, here's my latest of what I hope are many more interviews to come with blues great Al Basile. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, Al.
Hello, Randy.
How you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's good to see you.
Likewise, it's been quite a while. I think it's been, I don't know, a couple years now, I think, since we last spoke. So
could well be. I didn't release a record last year, so the most recently would be 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of unusual. Don't you normally do an album a year, or
normally I do an album a year. I'd say since 98, this is the 21st one. So it's almost one a year. Some years I have to skip, and I'm running out of money.
Aren't we all?
Well, you don't get into this particular end of the business to make it. You got to be in a position to spend it. So I'm stretching things out a little bit from 2 years ago. I did a retrospective of 25 years of my record company, Sweet Spot, and I did 17. I had 17 of my favorite tunes remastered from the 25 years that I'd had that. So there wasn't anything new on that. So then I took a year off. So I'm back now, and one of the results of that layoff is that because I keep writing songs all the time. So this particular record, which by the way, I like your background.
Good. I'm glad.
I got to choose what I thought was the best 13 songs to fit together out of, I think it was over 25 that I had written over the last couple of years. So that's a little different. Usually every year I write 13 and I record 13.
Mm-hmm. It's well, I guess the beauty of it for you is don't you have your own studio that you get to work in at whenever you want, so you don't have that cost? Or
not exactly. All I have at home is just a little demo studio. And the studio that I use to track is one that I've used for 40 years, going back to my first records that I made with Duke Robillard back in the 80s. And that's
mm-hmm.
Lake West, which is, it's also in Rhode Island, which you would think must be close, but it's about 20 minutes down the road. And I made a lot of records in that studio, but I can't just drop in whenever I feel like it, like I can to my basement.
Understood. Well, what's the story behind this album? I understand what you just said as far as picking the songs, having songs to pick from and all that, and taking the previous year off. But what did you have in mind? What did you hope to accomplish with this particular album?
Well, over the last 3 years, I've gotten involved doing production work I have a production partner at a studio that he owns down in Chattanooga. His name is Glenn Halverson, and he's the engineer in his studio. And we work as a production pair, and I'm able to do that actually from up here in Rhode Island. I can do it from distance. And we over the last few years, we produced country records, bluegrass records, a blues record, a progressive blues record by Jet Black. And we work with young artists down there. And so I've been on the job training in production. And so one of the main objectives I had for this album, because I'm the producer of this album, is to be the determining factor on every level of this record. So in other words, the songs didn't exist, they came into my head. I wrote them down, I made the demos, I went in and we tracked, and then we tracked with Jack Gauthier at Lake West, which is in Rhode Island. And then all the tracks went down to Chattanooga, and from distance, I worked back and forth with Glenn on the mixing and the mastering. So essentially, I've made almost all the decisions on the outcome of this record, not just the songs, but the performances and particularly the sound. And we're very proud of getting a different sound, a fresher sound on this album than I've ever had before. So that was the first objective. And the second objective is I've used Kid Anderson on 3 albums now, and he's just tremendous. But he's the major other soloist on my albums. So I thought, well, boy, if he's going to play that great, I'm going to have to take longer solos and try, because we've got to balance off. I mean, he can't dominate. I got to get right up in his face with what I'm doing. So what I did was essentially I doubled the length of all my solos on this album. So there's twice the amount of my cornet solos on this album. And there's a side story to that too, because when COVID happened, like most of us, I had a lot of time at home. And the way that I used a lot of it was to practice more, and my playing improved. So I thought, well, I'm playing better, I'm going to play more. And so that's one of the things on this album that will stand out to those people that know all my earlier ones. There's never been so much horn improvising on any of my records. So those were the 2 major things. And then the third thing is that because of a number of things that have happened in my life over the last few years, I wrote songs on some different topics that I would not have written before, because I don't believe in writing a song about something that I haven't experienced one way or another. Now you can build on the experience of friends, and you can extend your own experience. But there are lyrics that I'm not going to sing if I don't have a way to feel like I have some authority. I'm not going to sing that lyric, and so I'm not going to write a lyric that I'm not going to sing. So if you were to go through the album and look at the songs, there are a bunch of songs that are unlike ones that I've written before, even though stylistically the music isn't different and I'm not different. But there are some songs on classic themes that I simply would not have done prior to this record. So that's a third. Those are the 3 major, and they're pretty major differences.
Did it make you feel uncomfortable at all, or unsure of yourself, or less confident compared to all your other albums because you made these shifts?
No, not at all. In the first place, I've had lots of practice on the production side. And so it was kind of and I learned a lot from Duke. You know, Duke produced my first 18 albums, and I was always there, you know, when he and Jack would be mixing, and I'd be listening. And occasionally they would ask me my opinion on something, but basically Duke was at the helm. And so I listened and I absorbed what I could. but there's nothing like actually making the decisions and hearing the results yourself. And that's where I've been the last couple of years. So I felt comfortable doing that. Um, I've been playing cornet 67 years, almost. So, and I'm playing better now than I ever have. So no problem with my confidence there. I had some vocal problems several years ago. I had notes on my vocal cords that affected one of my albums. And I was really struggling at the time. And I thought, well, gee, I'm in my 70s. Maybe it's just age. It's harder for me to get my sound, and I have to push, and it sounds like I'm pushing. And you don't want to sound like you're pushing unless you do want to sound like you're pushing, but you don't want it to happen without your, having any control over it. And I thought, well, gee, maybe this is just it. Turns out I had a fungal infection in my vocal cords, and I had an otolaryngologist that gave me a prescription, cleared it up in 3 weeks. And that was 3 years ago. And I haven't had any issues vocally since. So I was fine there. And the writing, I knew, I've written hundreds of songs, but I knew that some of these songs were, I had the right to sing them. So I had no problem there. So no, and I don't generally suffer from any kind of lack of confidence. I just close my eyes and jump in.
Just do it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, are there any particular tracks on Blues in Hand that say hold a special meaning for you and why, and or maybe one that you would point to as a calling card or gateway drug for the rest of the album?
Well, I'm particularly fond of all the slow blues, like My Dearest Dream, or Blues Is My Roommate, which is on a classic theme. It's like Robert Johnson had Me and the Devil Was Walking Side by Side, and this song, the devil is moving in, blues is moving
Mm-hmm.
in, and you're going to have to deal with it. And I like that one because when you get to the end, the singer, who's been told over and over again that the devil is moving in and it's going to have control, basically says, just go ahead and do your worst. You're still not going to get your way. So in other words, it's a twist. It's not, you're taking me down and there's nothing I can do about it. It's, you can do all you want, but I'm still gonna come up on top. I think I like that because of the attitude. There's a lot of blues songs that don't, that kind of acknowledge that there are things beyond our control. And so this is a song that says, well, maybe, but not this. I can do this. And so I like that. When You Lose Your Money, I particularly like, because I went through some stuff, and so I could write the song. And that, of course, is about how sometimes you got to go through some things to find out who your true friends are. So
Absolutely.
blues is the truth, but there's a lot of truths. That particular truth I had never written before. And it's great to find out that the people that you consider your real friends actually are, because they come through
Yeah.
for you, when you
Yeah.
need it. So that song means a lot to me because I learned something about my friends before I wrote that song. Um, and then, oh gosh, uh, Good Friends means a lot to me because for the same reason. And basically that song is about uh, you're going to need good friends. Nobody can do it all by himself. But the other thing that I like about that lyric, as I was a teacher for 25 years in one place, and I still teach now online. And so I often give advice, whether people ask for it or not. Um,
I think
And
you're entitled to do that.
yeah, yeah, and so the end of the lyric of Good Friends is, well, if you want to have good friends, you got to be a good friend. That's where they're going to come from because you've got to show it. You can't go out and expect it. So those songs are examples. I mean, obviously, I picked these out of a much bigger group of songs. So there's something I like special about every single one. But those jump out at me. Uh, the the tune that Jet Black plays "Slide On" means a lot to me. That's uh, "Ain't What You Say, It's What You Do." Because I've worked with Jet and continue to work with Jet down in Tennessee, and I recorded something for him, and so this is my way to invite him to come be on my record. So all the other songs are Kid, but this one particular one is Jet on Slide, and so for that reason, I'm very fond of that because it's nice to he plays great slide, and so it's a little change of pace, in the sound.
Right, right. I'm. It seems like the common thread through the album is integrity, not only of yourself but of friendships, relationships. Whether they're personal or business or whatever. There's integrity that is foundational to getting through the challenges of life. Is that a fair observation?
Sure. I mean, at this point, which is I'm 77, so if you don't have that by this point, you're probably in a world of hurt.
Yeah, kind of screwed.
So it's a lesson that bears repeating, but it's also something that I believe in, that I kind of live by. So I work with people; they're great players, but we understand each other. I mean, I've worked with all the people on the album except for Jet are on multiple albums of mine, and they were all in Duke's band for a long time. Some of them still are in Duke's band, and so we go way back, a couple of decades. And so it's not like they're not like hired guns. I mean, they
Right.
are, but they're not. It's like we have a long-standing experience. And so, where integrity comes in is, I mean, there's different ways that you show people how you respect them. So when I go into track, I have an unusual process for my writing, because when I write the arrangement at the same time that I write the song. So by that, I mean that I will consciously I'll write off a groove. And so I can hear the groove, and so I know where my vocal phrasing is going to be. The groove is established by the bass line, and I leave places in the bass line where my vocal phrasing is going to fit and push back. And then I write the horn parts to answer the vocal part.
Hmm.
So in other words, I've got three entities that are all there at the very beginning of the song. And when I make a demo, the only things you hear on the demo is the lead vocal, the bass line, and the horn parts. And that's because the horns and the bass have to play what I write. The rest of it, I leave open to the chord guys, because I'm not a keyboard guy. I'm not a guitar guy. I mean, I play both, but I'm not at the level of the guys I have working for me. So I give them the chord charts. I give them the demos, and then I let them find their way into filling out the arrangement. So it's interesting. It's a combination of guidance and kind of giving some orders, but leaving room for as much contribution on the part of the players as the song is going to bear. And again, the guys I've been with for so long, everything they add, they know how I write. They add stuff that's idiomatic and is great and works. So that's kind of how everything comes together. And you can think about that in terms of trying to treat people right and letting them really be a part of the project and not just come in and do their thing and go have dinner.
They feel like they're more part of the project than just,
I
you
sure
know.
hope so. I mean, that is what I'm trying to do. But at the same time, I'm not getting anything that I don't want, that I
Mhm.
don't like. I'm getting some things I couldn't have thought of, and that's great. And at the end of the day, your name is on the thing. So everybody that's contributing something good is only making you sound good.
That's
So
right.
let them do it.
Absolutely. Was there anything on here, were there any memorable stories or experiences that took place while you were recording and putting this together?
So you're not talking about what caused the songs to be written.
No,
You're
I'm talking
talking
about
about,
in the recording, in the making of the album itself.
yeah, the recording and the production.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's again, it's interesting. The guy that I work with, Glenn Halverson, who owns the studio, he has all the most up to date technology. Um, and so he's got every plug in. He can do anything. And so part of what was going on in the making of this record was he was kind of teaching me everything that he could do that might be appropriate for this. In other words, he might be able to do 100 things, but 3 of them fit with this.
Right.
And so he's kind of teaching me as we go as to what we can do. And it was a great process because I was learning, but at the same time, we're getting the record done, and we had a point. We reached a point, and I can't remember which tune it was, but we were maybe a third of the way along in the process. Not on all the songs. Essentially, we were trying to get the sound down for one song, and then we would use that as a template for all the others. Because I have, except for Jet, it's all the same people playing all the same instruments in the same room at the same time, except for
Mhm.
Kid. He was in California and he added his parts later. So we're working on that, and I actually reached a point where I was able to make a suggestion that was an important contribution to the overall sound of the record, which kind of surprised me. But because I kind of didn't know what I was saying, you know,
Mhm.
but I said something and Glenn said, "What?" And I said, "Well, how about this?" He said, "Well, I would never have thought of that." I said, "Well, just try it." And then we liked it. So it was like, that was great because I obviously knew I was making a big contribution in every other way. Clearly,
Mhm.
it's my voice, it's my horn, and they're my arrangements, they're my songs. It's me all over. But I actually got to the point where I learned enough to contribute on that side as well. And that to me is that was that was a terrific feeling because there's never any promise that you're gonna come up with anything that's going to be useful,
Mhm.
especially
Well,
basically your first time.
well, yeah, and for you, I mean, that's something that us as listeners and fans wouldn't ever know
Right.
listening to the album, but you can listen to the album and you've got that extra layer
Yeah.
of knowledge of what took place and what that all means to you, you know.
Yeah. Obviously we live with this record in ways that because we were doing we were doing, I mean, we were mixing, but he was teaching me how to mix while we were mixing. So it took
Mm-hmm.
some time. But yeah, if people that know my records, if they go back and listen to any of them, and a lot of the more recent ones even have the same personnel. So Through with Cool, for example, has got Kid and it's got all the same guys. So if you go back and listen to Through with Cool and then A/B it with Blues in Hand, and you hear a difference in the sound of the record, and you should. We've kind of got moved to another place in the sound, and that's, I mean, it's funny. You go all the way back to the greatest recordings that that I ever knew or lived with, like Robert Johnson playing Face in the Corner and in some hotel room in, what was it, San Antonio or someplace, and he's just playing and a couple of guys are picking it up. I mean, he sang a song, he played the song, and then he went to dinner. That was it. They didn't invite him back to help get the sound was what they got. So there are all these things going on now that never happened before, and but you still want to make, you want to make a recording that is gonna not be trendy. It's gonna age well. It's going to sound as good in 10 years or, when I'm dead, if you want to hear my sound. I'll tell you this. We got the sound. It's very hard to record a solo brass instrument. So I play the cornet, and because they have rich overtone series. And so it's subtle. And what we got, and this is all with the same recording jack, gets great sounds. And so there was no difference, same microphones that I've used in the past, same engineer. So the same tracks kind of, came down to us. But my sound of my open horn on this record, that's where you hear the actual tone of the player. Because when you're using a Harman mute, that metallic sound, everybody sounds pretty much the same. The mute changes the sound so much. But you hear my open horn sound, that's as close to the way I hear myself, like in the room when I'm practicing, that I've ever gotten on any of my other records. I'm really happy with that. So that's another thing about, and when we got this, we actually didn't get that sound while we were making this record. We got it earlier, or I should say late last year, when I was making a single with Jet of St. James Infirmary. And I went down to Chattanooga and we did the session in the studio. And Jet was influenced by the Louis Armstrong version, among others. So he wanted me to play on it. And so I actually played open horn, cup mute, and plunger. But on Harman. So I had 4 different mute sounds. Three mute sounds in my open sound. So we discovered the way to get my open sound when I was making that for him. And then we transplanted it onto my own thing. So I'm really happy with that because it means now as I go forward, I'm going to really like the way I sound. And I think of my horn as like my other voice. I mean, I work very hard to get a warm, big, rich sound. I use equipment that's not easy to play, but you get a better sound. I'm all into the sound of it. So to make an improvement in the sound of it on the record itself, that's exciting to me.
Looking back, is there anything you would do differently with your previous albums compared to what you've learned and did on this album? In other words, with how you've put this one together, you go, gosh, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done such and such differently on whichever album or song.
Well, I would say no, but, and here's how I would explain that. I love all my other albums. I love the way they sound. I'm happy with all of them. Duke's production is great. Um, but the equipment that we brought to bear on this one is totally current. So the things that are different about this record couldn't have been done 5 or 10 years ago because the plugins didn't exist.
Right.
So so I would say no, I wouldn't go back and change anything. But I would also say we learned some things making this one that's going to allow us to improve next time out.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
Gotcha.
next time out there'll be further developments in what you can actually do. I mean, these things are improving all the time. The mastering software improves all the time. So, I mean, to say it isn't so much as what I know now that I would go back and change. It's if I could take a time capsule with all of the current equipment back then, I would have used it.
I
But
gotcha. Yeah. That's
there's no
not
Millennium
practical.
Falcon.
Yeah, that time machine hadn't happened yet. So that brings up an interesting point, though, with what you can do in the studio. How does that affect when you go out and like you're going to perform these songs in public? Does that make it difficult to replicate on stage what you do in the studio?
Okay, that's a great question because it gives me an opening to rant.
Okay.
There's two ways to approach a recording. One is to say what we're going to try to do is to capture the sound of that you would hear if you went to hear the band. And so then you try to make the record sound like that. And normally you would say, well, so why not record live? And of course, people do record live. But even when you record live, you don't get exactly what you would hear if you were in the room because the mics are only where the mics are. If you're in a different place in the room, you hear something different.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of trying to capture the live performance is one approach. The other approach, and I mean, this really came into real popularity in popular music in the late 60s when the Beatles got off the road and started to produce records that couldn't be done live, but they were records. They're trying to create something that was what you hear isn't exactly what you would hear live, but it's
Mm-hmm.
as a as an example of the concept of the sound. It's the result of the greater control that you have, in the studio. So it's like, what are you making? Are you trying to sound like the live thing, or are you trying to make something that has its own integrity, to use a word that you brought up earlier? Now, actually, I don't play out a whole lot, but the last time that I did play out was down in Chattanooga. Again, when I went down there to work on that session, Jet Black has got a club, and he's got a blues night every Tuesday night, and so I was one of the guests, and I performed 5 of the songs from the album. This is last November. Album didn't exist yet, so Jet has got a show on the University of Tennessee radio station that they play. We produce an hour show. He has guests every Tuesday night, and that's recorded and live, and then they're packaged up and edited and replayed over the Tennessee station, and then we're in the process of submitting the shows to for syndication on NPR nationally. And so I'm on one of those shows. It hasn't been edited yet, but I'm going to be interested to hear how it sounds, because that's actually the live version of the songs, even before there was a recorded version. And of course, the players are all different except for me, but the songs are the same, and I'm singing them the same and playing. And so that's going to be interesting. That's going to be sometime. I think when we get into into later into the fall, they're going to start running those shows monthly or weekly. So it's interesting. But again, to answer your question, what are you shooting for? Live, quote unquote, which will actually never be live, or something else. Yeah. And so Blues in Hand is definitely something else. But we have kind of created a sound that, without having been done the way live is done, gives you the feeling, the sense of depth. If you listen to the sound field, it's got to feel like live, but it isn't the same. But it's kind of like the parallel in terms of a produced thing that's been put together carefully and assembled, but it doesn't sound like it was assembled, like a clock. It's got the kind of depth that you would hear if you were in a space. It sounds like a band. That's what the people that have heard it say. It sounds like a band. But of course, if we had put those guys in a room and had them play exactly what they played, it wouldn't sound anything like that.
Right. Well, and I think that's something that fans that aren't musicians, or have never even if they are, if they've never recorded. Yeah. And I mean, I have minimal experience, and it's because of what I do on my end of things. You think you know what it's sounding like, and then it's like, holy crap. Just recently I did an interview using, I was visiting someone, and I used their spare room to conduct an interview.
Uh-oh.
For me, I was listening, I was like, holy crap, I don't like how this sounds. I could hear slight echo. It's hyper attentive to how I sounded, and I'm my own worst critic, right?
Yep.
I played it for someone else, and then they listened to it and said, I think it sounds fine. It sounds like always does. I was like, oh, no. And so even as fan, let's just even take the producer of music out of the equation. You go to the listener, the consumer of music. You hear an album, you love it. You go see the artist in concert. And let's say it was less than enjoyable. Was it because of the band? Was it because of the venue? Was it because of the people around you? Was it because your hearing's a little bit? I mean, there's so many variables that come into play that you can't possibly control them all.
Yeah, that's you've described very well what goes through my head when I'm trying to figure out how we want the record to sound, because again, Glenn and I, we're soaking in it, day after day.
Yeah.
We hear every little. That's basically my job, because he's in the studio doing all this stuff, and so he's one track mind listening to the sound. It doesn't even know what the song is about. He's just listening to the sound. Then he will send me the track at whatever stage it's at, and I will listen, and I will hear things that, when I point them out, he will go back and he'll say, yeah, I hear them now. But he wasn't going to hear them on his own, because he's doing a different thing. And so what we all tend to forget is that the audience is also doing a different thing. they're there doing, so when I talk about, the new record has a different sound from the old records, most people probably won't even hear that, but they might get a feeling, they might like it and not know why they like it.
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
The rest of us can trace it back and say, well, Yeah, that's because all of these things are different. But people listen in so many different ways. And so for me, I wrote lyrics before I wrote music. Okay. In college, I wrote musicals and I wrote lyrics and book and lyrics to Broadway type musicals that we performed at Brown. And I had a partner who was a composer. And so I started out with the words and then I learned to write the music later. And so my songs are very important to me in terms of they all are trying to say something. There's a billion people that listen to the sound of a record. They don't listen to what they couldn't tell you what the song is about. Or
Right.
maybe they put it on when, they're making dinner and it's on the other side of the kitchen. You know, the the challenge, and this is something I take really seriously, because first of all, I was in Roomful of Blues, was my first band, and we played for dancers. And that's what the music, blues and swing and classic R&B was all dance music. And so I have strong grooves. All of my songs are danceable. But if all you want to do is just listen to the rhythm, there's rhythm for you. If you want to listen to, it's like you're a guitar freak and you want to hear great solos, there's Kid Anderson playing great solos. Um,
Hmm.
if you actually want to sit down and listen to the songs, they all say something. But you can enjoy the record wherever you're set and you're listening. There's something for you. So what I'm shooting for is whether you're a casual listener or a dedicated listener, you're going to hear different things, but there's something for you. And there's something
Yeah.
good for you all the way through. That's my goal.
Well, I like it. I love it a lot. In fact, just listening to it and while I'm working and such, it was,
Right.
that's why, when Mark sent me this stuff, I first of all, seeing your name come up again after a couple of years, I was like, oh, okay. I know, there's certain artists, when you see the name, you go, okay, I gotta, I can't wait. There's anticipation. There's this, what goodies do they have for us now?
Right.
And then there's others. It's like, well, not so much,
Yeah.
So, and
Well,
yours is
thank
one
you.
of
I
those
want to
when,
be in that number.
well, you are solidly, believe me.
Great.
But
Great.
you have great music, great sound, great mood music, even. And you were talking about songs where people don't even know the words; they just like the sound. One of my favorite examples of that is Bonnie Raitt's "I Can't Make You Love Me." When I first heard it, I thought, wow, what a romantic sound. I can almost picture the candlelight and, all this. Then you
Yeah.
start listening to the words, it's like, well, heck no. That's that song means you're going to be by yourself.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But what a beautiful sounding song. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even listen to instrumentals of that song now without thinking of those words. It's just like totally ruined
That's
for me
interesting.
now.
But there are a lot of listeners that have never noticed that fight between the message of the lyric and the mood of the song.
Yeah.
It's like they just like the sound of it,
Yeah.
and they couldn't tell you what it was about. So they don't. Or it's funny, you can listen to Bonnie's voice and just get off on the sound of her voice and
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
notice what it is she's singing. That old
That's
joke
right.
about singing the phone book.
Yeah.
There are singers that are like that. Ella Fitzgerald
Absolutely.
was like that.
Oh
Just
yeah.
like that sound.
Yeah, for sure. Very much so. So what's on your radar for the rest of the year and going into next year? What you got planned?
Well, I don't know if you're aware that I juggle three artistic careers.
Mhm. I
Okay.
knew of a couple of them. I knew you taught, and of course, your own solo work.
Well, okay. So first of all, I'm a poet. So I just had my fourth book published in April.
Ah,
So and I
okay.
just gave a reading last weekend. So and I actually have a, a show on YouTube that I record with other poets where we where we read poems on a given topic. It changes every month, and I have two guests, and we kind of let you see behind the curtain to how poems get written and what poets are thinking about, and so there's shop talk, and I always have people on. I like their work, they like my work, and so it's up, it's good, it's uplifting. So that show is now in its fourth season. So that's an ongoing thing. I do that every month. Then as I say, I get a book out every 4 years. So this is my fourth book. My first book came out in 2012. So poet, about the music stuff. I'm going to leave teaching out because that's a little bit different. I'm also a playwright. And what I do is I write audio plays. So if you ever listen to radio plays back in the day,
Right.
where you put on the radio and you hear something, well, there's a modern version of it with stereo sound, so you can hear people walk from this part of the room to the other. And so I write audio plays, and I do one a year. I'm currently in rehearsal for number 7. So I've been doing this since 2019, and some of my earlier shows have won national awards with the National Audio Theater Festival. So those people think I'm a playwright. And I also act in my plays, and I direct them, and I work with a different engineer, and we produce them, and I write the music for them. And so that's like a whole other thing that I do. And I actually work with actors that performed in the musicals I wrote in college. They're in their
Wow.
late 70s now. And so they can't, they would be doing regional theater, but they can't because there are no parts for somebody 78.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it. But vocally, they can cut it. So every year I have a little company of players, and I write parts for them specifically, knowing their voices. I take my cue from Duke Ellington because he used to do that in his band. He would write a song for Johnny Hodges, to do the solo because he knows Johnny Hodges' sound, or Cootie Williams, or Paul Gonsalves, or Harry Carney. So I write parts for these actors, and then we all get together and go in the studio and record them. And they come out every year. So right now we're in the middle of rehearsal. We'll be going in to record probably the beginning of November, and I'll be working on production till the end of the year. And then we'll have to see. I got another 25 new songs that I haven't gotten around to yet, on top of the leftover ones from this project.
Wow.
So I have 35 songs to pick. I have no problem with songs, but finding the time and finding the money, finding the backing for it, we'll have to see how that goes. As soon as I can afford it, I'll be right back in the studio. And I've got the studio, I've got the people, everything's in place, except for the lubricant.
Yeah. The key to the door.
So that's the plan. Is I got to keep my show going every month. I'm writing all the time, and I get published, in magazines and things like that. And then my books come out every few years, and then my plays come out every year, and then I'm doing the musical thing, and I'm teaching online. I teach poetry online, and I have a lyric writing course that I taught online, where I work with people on specifically writing lyrics, because a lot of people don't really understand that you can learn how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you
But
mentioned something though. You mentioned something back on the regional play thing that triggered a thought. Obviously my focus is on our generation, the baby boomer generation, right? And
that's
so
what Boomerocity is all about.
that's it, man. In fact, osity means the essence of. So boomerocity is the essence of being a baby boomer.
There you
So
go.
but I was, my career was in high tech, and I was laid off like 3 years ago, and trying to get another job in my field, my day job
Yeah.
field at my age is virtually impossible. In
Really?
fact, a headhunter friend of mine told me once that the line of demarcation in corporate America is 38 years old, which blew my mind. It's
Well, that's
unofficial.
almost like Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah,
You're a
exactly.
woman in Hollywood, you can't be older than 39.
Exactly, exactly. So, but yet there's this huge marketplace. Granted, our demographic is shrinking every day because of our ages,
Yep.
but I know I'm here in I'm right up the road from Chattanooga. I'm in the Smoky Mountains. And so Knoxville,
Okay.
I know the baby boomer demographic is 45% of East Tennessee's population. That's
Okay.
significant. Why can't there be regional plays and productions that have baby boomers in there and that are written on subjects and entertainment that is of interest of you and I, that
Yep.
doesn't have to be depressing. It doesn't have to be, at at intermission the Geritol bar is now open. Nothing like
It's
that,
true.
right? I mean, we're still vibrant. We still are relevant, in my opinion. I think
Yep.
there's a whole untapped market out there that could still be drilled for riches for the right people that have the right kind of vision and skill set.
I think you're right about there being an audience. And obviously, where you're situated is living proof. The question would be, um, you got to have very high energy and motivated leadership to make something like that come together. The reason why I don't write plays for the stage, which I have done in the past, is that I've spent my adult life one way or another in music. So my contacts are in music.
Mhm.
I have friends who were in my plays in college who they've been in acting and in the theater their whole lives. So they're doing theater because they're known by those people. So the reason I do audio plays is I don't have to ask anybody to like my play. I can just make it,
Yeah,
you know.
true.
And so this is the thing: is you've got to have uh, the energy, you've got to have the organizational skills, you got to have the context to find the people. Although there's so many great actors that are over the age of pick a number, you're not going to have a problem with that. And the thing about audio is we rehearse a couple hours a week for a month, and they're ready to go. If you do a stage play, not only are they in there every night for who knows how many weeks, but they got to remember blocking. Where am I? Where do I go? They got to memorize lines, and they're old.
Yeah,
So
true.
I
Yeah,
bypass all of that. They're reading off the page. As long as those pipes are happening,
there
they
you go.
they can
Yeah.
do it. And so that's why I went that way, because I consciously knew I didn't at my age, kind of like what you were saying about looking for tech jobs at your age. At my age, I wasn't going to walk through the door of some theater company and say, "Oh, would you read my play, please?" So I found a way to do it um, that bypasses all those things, and it's worked out. Um, I mean, I don't make money from it, but our plays are excellent, and they've gotten national awards, and so the actors are happy.
Hmm.
They've got this. They do like their attention.
As part of the requirement of being an actor is
I
that,
know.
it's all in the applause.
my, there's a great quote from Marlon Brando about that. He said, "An actor is a guy who, if you're not talking about him, ain't listening."
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that could go for the bulk of society anymore. We've
Yeah.
kind of
Well, I
gotten
mean,
to
they're
that
even
point.
more needy than musicians. I mean, musicians can be quirky, but you know, musicians can do the thing. An actor has to wait for somebody else to give them directions.
Hmm.
I mean, at least the kind of music that I do um, is not read off a page.
True, true.
You don't have. I mean, there's a lot of music in the world that's played off the page, and I learned how to read when I was a small boy. And it's a good skill to have, but uh, most plays are not improvised. They're
True.
scripted.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
the actors have to wait. That's why my actors love the fact that not only do they get something to do every year, but they get a part that was not written for some guy 400 years ago, but for them
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah.
They really like that. And it makes it easier for me because I know what they're good at. And so if I want to throw them a bone, I'll write a part that lets them really do what they like. And then the next year, I'll write something that does not play so directly to what they enjoy doing. And it makes them stretch because they like that too.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
like to be challenged. So,
Hmm.
it's like feeding a bunch of dogs. You got to decide which one to feed first.
And which treat you have determines who you throw the treats to, right? So
Oh boy, does it. So that, I
get
mean,
off
by way
my
of answering
leg.
your question, it's not all, I've got music plans, but not only music plans, because I'm trying to, like I said, I'm 77 and I'm in good enough health that I can do all the things that I love to do. And I'm just going to do them,
Hmm.
while I can do them.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I'm in the same boat with you there, man. I'm enjoying what I do in my semi-retired state, and I get to talk to people like you all the time. So people keep telling me, man, you got a sweet gig. So you want to sit and watch how I do it? You might not think it's so sweet, but once you
Oh,
get to
well,
talk, once you fire the cameras up, it is a lot of fun. So
yeah. Well, that's not really very different from what it's like as a musician where, and I have poems about this, about the whole day that leads up to the gig. And,
yeah,
when you have to get up and how often you have to eat, and then you got to practice, and then you got to pick up people to get to the bus, and then the bus takes you to the gig, and then you got to do a sound check. Well, what you're getting paid for mostly is everything that leads up to those couple hours when you're playing. That's
yeah,
the fun part.
yeah.
And then you got to break everything down and get back in the bus and, go home. When I was in Roomful, we would leave for work usually about 4 in the afternoon. We would get back from work usually between 3 and 6 in the morning.
Wow.
And we were doing 300 dates a year.
My
And a
goodness.
lot of them were not loops where we were out away from home. We would go
Yeah,
out and back as far as we could go a couple hours out and a couple hours back and
yeah.
and still be home. And so we did a lot of work like that. But um, yeah, it's like the playing part you do for nothing, but you got to pay me to do the rest of that.
Yeah, that's right. That is so true. Well, Al, this has been a lot of fun, man. I've enjoyed it, and hopefully it
Yeah, I
won't be
agree.
two
Thank you. Good
years.
questions.
Well, thank you. I hope it's not another 2 years before we speak again. But whenever I'll be watching the emails from Mark as to when you have something else coming out, and we will definitely talk again.
Well, I love to talk. I would like to have something to talk about sooner rather than later. Let's hope it happens.
I'm sure it will. That's as prolific as you are. There's no doubt in my mind that there's going to be something new to talk about. So,
Well, something's going to happen, but we'll
yeah,
we'll. You never know. Nothing is. There are no guarantees, boy. When you're in the fourth quarter, which is where I put us, you never know.
yeah, I know. I keep fighting the temptation to punt on first down. So,
That's pretty good. I got to remember. How did I steal that?
I think I think I heard Steve Martin say something about that in one of his stand-up routines. He said that he wants to be he wants to call the shots. He wants to punt on first down or something. I never forgot it. So,
It's pretty good. Well, thank you.
well,
This has been very enjoyable, and I apologize for the mix-up where I was doing something and not thinking about what I was supposed to be thinking about. But
No, hey, if that's the worst that happens, we're doing pretty good, aren't we?
really, well, you tell me. I don't know how
I,
often people space out on you, but
I I've forgotten interviews before. Not very often, but I've done it two or three
yeah,
times over the years. In the 16 plus years I've done it, um, only time I get aggravated is when I've had one or two people, set up four appointments. All right, let's reschedule. You know, by the third time, I'm just, I'm saying, all right, and then number four, and it's like, I don't even bother communicating at that
yeah,
point
yeah,
because
yeah.
there's something else systemic going on there that does not include me. So,
Well,
um,
you use the word integrity early on, and that's part of it. You're supposed to do what you say you're going to do. It's a simple thing,
yeah,
but not always observed in the current moment.
yeah. And it's not limited to the work you and I do. It's everywhere, everywhere. So,
Yeah.
but,
I mean, something as simple as being punctual.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Novel concept there, right? So,
It's like, and you try to explain to somebody, well, no, actually, see, it's a matter of showing respect for the person's time that you're making wait. And
Mhm.
that never occurred to them. They're
I'm
only,
so old, I remember Lombardi time, right? So,
what was his punishment for that?
oh gosh, I think it was some laps or something. I can't. All I forgot the punishment because I just thought, hey, I could do Lombardi time. I don't need to know what the punishment is. I'll just go by Lombardi time. So be the first one there and the last one to leave. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, Al. Well, this was a lot of fun. I look forward to talking to you again, man. Just keep doing the good work you're doing.
Well, I will do my part. And now, if we can just recruit a few more people to do their part and sit down and listen, I'll be a happy person.
Well, that's what this is about. So hopefully I'll get a few more listeners for you.
Now, I appreciate that. You talk about doing good work. I don't tour, so I really rely on this kind of media and airplay
Mhm.
and, for people to just understand what it is that I do because I'm pretty convinced and I've personally seen that uh, any good music sells itself. People have to hear it.
That's it. That's
If
the
they hear
that's the
it,
trigger.
they'll go, "Hey, I like that." But the whole
Hmm.
trick is giving them a chance to hear it. So, like I say, since I don't tour, I like having a quiet life. All the things that I do, it's good being at home, but
Hmm.
but I'm not out there the way a lot of other people are fighting that fight, and that's really an important thing to do. If I were much younger, well, that's when I was doing it when I was much younger. So,
Right.
so my expectations aren't the same as if I were out doing that, but it's nice to make all the connections that you can. So I thank you for this.
My pleasure. That's what it's all about, my friend.
All
Well,
right,
listen, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to talking to you again down the road.
that sounds like a deal to me.
All righty, man. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
This has been another fun-filled episode of Boomerocity with your host and producer, Randy Patterson. The theme song is Roll the Dice and is recorded and used by permission from Quinton Hope. Quinton is spelled Quinten, and Hope is Hope. And you can find out more about Quinton at quintonhope.com. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected. Segments may only be used with written permission by Boomerocity and/or its assignees. Inquiries should be directed to input@boomerocity.com. Copyright 2025.